Welcome to the NonProfit Voice Tech Series, a special edition of the NonProfit Voice podcast, hosted by Mark Becker, founding partner of Cathexis Partners and editorial advisory board member of NonProfit Pro. In each episode of this monthly installment, Mark will have conversations with prominent nonprofit organizations and industry thought leaders to learn more about different technology offerings in the marketplace. Join us, and together we will learn more about these innovative digital tools and how to navigate the rapidly evolving technology landscape.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Mark Becker here, founding partner of Cathexis Partners, and wanted to kick off this year's podcast by talking about the technology landscape. Starting a new year, hopefully coming out of this whole thing, but I'm sick of saying that. But it's an ever-changing environment. There's a lot of going on in the technology, nonprofit technology space with acquisitions and mergers and the like. So I thought, who better to have on the call than Watt Hamlett? So Watt, thank you for joining us. And if you wouldn't mind kind of introducing yourself and your background, and let's get started.
All right. Mark, thanks for having me on the show. So I'm Watt Hamlett. I'm founder and principal of Watt Hamlett Consulting. I have a solo consulting practice where I focus on helping organizations navigate and succeed in the Salesforce ecosystem. And I've been doing that work with WHC for the past 4 years. So I consult to nonprofits who need some guidance and assistance as they navigate the process of working with Salesforce and making decisions about Salesforce. I also consult to businesses in the space to help them become more effective at serving nonprofits in the Salesforce ecosystem. So Salesforce is really my specialty, but I also have quite a background with other technology in the nonprofit space, and recognizing that Salesforce is not the right solution for every nonprofit in every case. So I try to keep close tabs on things that are going on elsewhere in the ecosystem. And my goal really is just to help nonprofits be as successful as they can be with whatever technology they may choose to adopt.
Really smart man with a great pedigree and background. In fact, I think we met circa 2008, we were talking about earlier, when you were at Convio, right? And they just come out with their Common Ground and later Illuminate CRM solution, and you were a solution engineer there helping sell that enterprise solution to different organizations. And I think you, like me, right, that's when it was kind of an introduction to Salesforce, was through Convio and what they were looking to do to kind of compete at that time with Blackbaud, right?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, when I started at Convio as a solution engineer, they had just their own product, their own platform that was called Convio. It was since rebranded to Illuminate Online, but it was really just a platform for online engagement. And in 2008, they released their first product on the Salesforce platform, Common Ground. And yeah, like you said, it was really designed to be a competitive alternative to Razor's Edge, which was the biggest donor database product in the sector at the time. And I was just really fascinated by the fact that here's this commercial platform called Salesforce that can be reconfigured to actually function as a donor database for nonprofits, and kind of got hooked on that concept at that point in time. Of course, as things played out, Blackbaud ended up acquiring Convio and those Salesforce-based solutions. And in fact, we were just discussing the fact that it was 10 years ago today. It was the third Tuesday in January, as we're recording this, that acquisition was made by Blackbaud. And so now, at that point in time, Blackbaud then owned Salesforce-based solutions alongside their other solutions. Common Ground was the kind of the first one to go. I think maybe within the first year of having that product, they announced that they were going to sunset it. And then Illuminate CRM, the other product, has hung in there for 10 years. But of course, as of June 30th this year, that product will no longer be offered by Blackbaud. So they sort of, with acquiring Convio, they sort of invested in in Salesforce-based solutions, and now here, 10 years later, they will have sort of fully divested themselves of Salesforce-based products.
Yeah, so full life cycle there of the Luminate CRM product. June, I think, end of June, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Sunsetting. So I think there's still I know there's still organizations who are helping them migrate currently. In some cases, some are going to Razor's Edge, some are going to nonprofit Success Pack, which has come a long way, right, in those 10 years. And some are going to other solutions. So people still making that move, but definitely interesting to see the full life arc of that product.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, I mean, the good news is that Salesforce's own offerings for nonprofits, particularly for fundraising, have come a long way. And I think we'll talk a little bit about some of the developments that happened last year, but really in the past 2 years now, Salesforce.org, so the part of Salesforce that serves the nonprofit space, has developed 6 of their own paid products. Initially, Salesforce.org would only essentially resell the products that were developed by the main Salesforce.com company. But that strategy changed a couple of years ago, and now we really see the fruits of that. So, 6 different products that nonprofits can purchase directly from Salesforce.org, and I'm not aware of other products that are on the horizon at this point in time, but I'm sure they're thinking of that, right? Because that's really become their strategy now, is to not just be a reseller of the commercial products on the Salesforce side, but to actually create and manage their own purpose-built products for nonprofits.
Yeah, so let's start the conversation there. Kind of, the 2 big players when it came to enterprise solutions for a while were Salesforce and Razor's Edge. Microsoft has obviously also come into the mix, and then some others, and we'll talk more about them. But Salesforce and Blackbaud, and kind of different mindsets when it comes to those 2 products, right? When you're looking at Salesforce, it's quite often, even though they do have kind of all-encompassing products and more packaged items that they're offering as a stack, it's still quite often a point solution, best-in-class point solution, with Salesforce being the source of truth, the CRM, and using the app exchange and partnerships to kind of find other apps that integrate with Salesforce. Whereas, with Blackbaud, quite often you're kind of doing the entire enterprise suite end to end, and that's definitely very different mindsets there. Any thoughts or comments about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just always curious in terms of how companies stack up to each other, and of course, here with Blackbaud and Salesforce, you have public companies. Blackbaud, of course, is exclusively focused on technology for nonprofits, or sort of the both the software for nonprofits themselves, and then also now for companies that want to sort of engage in philanthropic activities. So they kind of cover both of those bases now. So that's all they do. All of their revenue is associated with serving that market. Whereas, of course, Salesforce is, $16-20 billion company. The nonprofit part of that is tiny compared to everything they do, but still they rival Blackbaud in terms of the number of customers, the number of nonprofit customers that they serve, the number of employees they have, and even now the number of solutions they offer. I was looking at Blackbaud's website just because I don't work quite as much with them anymore, but just to kind of refresh myself. And there's 8 different categories of products today that Blackbaud offers with subcategories within there. A lot of those have been driven by acquisitions that Blackbaud has made over the years. So, eTapestry is still essentially a product that Blackbaud offers that they acquired maybe 2007 or so.
Yeah, that's about right.
Some of the things that they've acquired have since been sunset, like PIDI. I think Kintera is pretty much no
It
longer.
it is sunsetted, I think last year or a couple of years ago now. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas
I think
other things they've acquired are still active offerings, including Luminate Online, still,
Right.
still a product that they sell. And then just in the past month, they announced their acquisition of EverFi, which is a product I'm not really that familiar with, but it's sort of builds itself as a solution for learning, really targeted more towards companies and K-12 schools. And that, as far as I can tell, that's the biggest acquisition they've made since they acquired Convio. I think at the time Blackbaud acquired Convio, that was maybe the largest nonprofit acquisition ever from a technology perspective. But EverFi, $750 million really, kind of dwarfs that Convio acquisition. So Blackbaud is this kind of under the hood is this conglomeration of both technologies that they have developed themselves plus things that they have acquired, and sort of exclusively focused on serving the nonprofit space. When you look at Salesforce, right? Kind of a similar story, and it's Salesforce under the hood is also a conglomeration of a lot of acquired products over time. The things that they've created more recently for the nonprofit sector are mostly things that they have developed internally. So things like Elevate, their online fundraising platform.
That kind of originated out of the seeds of their acquisition of what's it? The consulting company. Yeah. Do you think there was some origins there? Because Round Corner had their own payment solutions and all that, or at least some thinking behind that.
I'm not 100% sure. My sense is that it was designed to kind of be a replacement for that aspect of the Round Corner product, NGO Connects, which is also that's an acquisition that Salesforce.org made.
Yep.
That they have basically announced
sunsetted.
Sunsetted. And so I think a lot of the product development that they've done has been in an effort to create feature parity with the tools that they acquired from Round Corner and are now sunsetting.
And then there's other players, right, that are starting to grow larger. So those are the two major players. But then there's been other acquisitions, even just in the last year. Bloomerang acquired Kindful about a year ago, right?
Okay.
Every Action merged with CyberGrants, Social Solutions, and also acquired GiveGab and Salsa Labs last year. And now just this month announced Network for Good and Cause for Action is all into that mix. So, I mean, Every Action, that's a lot going on in that area, right?
Yeah. I mean, they for a long time, we're just growing organically. That sort of donor database and online engagement suite that Every Action built kind of stood alone for 4 or 5 years. And then back in 2018, they got some venture capital investment, and then their acquisition spree really began. So I kind of saw them as sort of being in the mold of Blackbaud, of looking to grow the company through acquiring competitive tools in a lot of cases, and both getting the products that come along with that, but then also the market share that comes along with that.
Right.
So I think by the middle of 2021, last year, Every Action had, depending on how you slice it, they have 5 or 6 different online engagement platforms, whereas before there was just one, right? So now here's one company that can be more of a one-stop shop in terms of being able to provide options for different parts of the nonprofit market. And then, like you said, when they got combined with Social Solutions and CyberGrants, now not just focused on the fundraising aspect of nonprofit work, but also sort of the program management side for human services organizations, and then sort of the corporate social responsibilities, the side of the equation as well. I think there's not a name for that new sort of entity that's been announced yet. I think they're still planning to sort of give it a name, but right now they're operating largely as different companies. But again, an example of how over time a single company has grown to be able to encompass more and more of the kind of the technology needs of nonprofits. And I think it's a mixed bag, honestly. I'd love to know what you think about it as well, Mark. But I do think, as companies grow larger, there's more stability that comes along with that. They have more capacity to serve more customers. There's just they develop more maturity in their software development processes and their customer services processes. So I do think there are definitely advantages that come with tech companies serving the nonprofit space growing larger and more capable.
In time, right? But yeah, it takes a while to get there, and then you have the storming, forming, norming. That's got to be going on, because I think about Every Action now, and they just on a small set point solution of what they're really focused on. They have, I think, 4 or 5 peer-to-peer fundraising solutions now, because GiveGab had their own, but GiveGab acquired Kimbia, so now that was GiveGab Enterprise, I think, and then Salsa had their own, Every Action had their own, and Network for Good has theirs. So now they have like 5, low, small end, mid-market kind of peer-to-peer solutions. And what do you do when you have all those in your pocket and have to support them all? And what does that look like? And are any of them really the path forward versus where the other technology is at, their competitors are at right now? That's all very interesting. What they have is kind of an offshoot of their main reasons for acquiring these companies.
Right. And so if you're a customer now that's in the market, is it clear what your options are when dealing with these companies? And I think Mark, you and I both come from the perspective of having been around this world for a while. And I mean, just talking about Convio and Blackbaud, right? That's sort of a perfect example of where you get sort of mixed signals in terms of, are these technologies going to be around? Are they not? If you're a nonprofit, you don't want to have to make a change in your technology every 1 or 2 years. You're looking to invest in something that's going to serve you for as long as possible. And so, yeah, I think that is kind of the back to the mixed bag. That is kind of the downside of these situations, is it does, at least in the short term, it creates some lack of clarity around what the options are for customers. I think the other potential thing that happens is that, or that can happen, and I'm not saying this is the case with Every Action, but is that often it's in these smaller companies where more innovation is happening, because they're not saddled with years of technical debt, because they're smaller. They can be more nimble and more responsive in kind of driving innovation in their solutions. And I think what we've seen over time is that as these companies get acquired, some of that tends to cool a little bit, and rather than driving a lot of innovation, there's often just almost pulling back, right? You see it kind of with the way Blackbaud took Common Ground and Luminate CRM out of the market over time, right? And instead of investing in innovating on those solutions, they sort of let them sit on the vine and then eventually cut them loose.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, in addition to those, big players and the ones that are getting larger through acquisition, there's the other, newer, more cutting edge, a lot of arguably, that are coming out, like Give Butter, Virtuous has been around for a while, but being more so in the nonprofit space now in the last few years, and then point solutions like Fundraise Up, and other kind of custom systems like Driven up in Canada. There's a lot of other players here. So like 15 years ago, when I first got into consulting, no one, saying I heard from somebody else, could have been you for all I know. No one ever got fired for selecting Blackbaud. Yeah, that was kind of the mantra. You won't get fired for picking Blackbaud, because it was kind of everybody knew of it and it had that. But now there's so many different competitors that are out there, and so many different options. And who's the best? Well, that's not the right question. And the answer in that case is it depends on what your technology staff comfort with technology is, your actual system requirements, your processes, and a lot of variables, your budget, right? All of these things come into play. So it's not an easy answer, but it's a larger discussion, right? But just looking at it from the basics, looking at like an enterprise stack solution versus best in class point solutions, there's even just challenges and the considerations there, right? Because if you go with an enterprise stack solution, you have to probably compromise on some of the different features in some of the point solutions, whereas if you choose the best in class, then you're choosing the right system for you, hopefully, through your selection process. But then you have to make sure it all integrates and it's all talking to each other, and the trains are running on time, and all data is flowing everywhere it needs to be to your accountants and your support staff and everybody, right? So there's not one simple answer. And in those acquisitions, a lot of people automatically think, oh, well, they've made this acquisition, so they're now part of an enterprise suite and everything's integrated, right? And that's not even necessarily the case. Point in case, Blackbaud and LO, Illuminate Online, through the Convio acquisition, I think they're still, in the majority of the cases, recommending Omatic as an integration solution between Illuminate Online and Razor's Edge versus their integrator, because they're still very different systems that need to be connected via something. So it's any suggestions or any thoughts around that whole selection process and how to weed through that?
Yeah, I mean, no question, there's more technology options for nonprofits than ever, and I think that's a great thing. But because choice in the market is always a good thing, right? I mean, where there's competition, vendors have to work harder to stay ahead of the pack, to keep their customers happy. So I love the fact that there are so many options out there. But the downside of that is that it introduces a lot of complexity, both in terms of making the right choices for your organization, and then being able to use the tools effectively for on an ongoing basis in your nonprofit, right? There's challenges on the front end and on the back end of those decisions. I mean, for my own part, and this is my focus is really, again, kind of the Salesforce ecosystem, but this is part of why I created my business, was to provide a resource to organizations that can help them sort through that complexity. Even with just keeping it focused on Salesforce, there's so many decisions to be made in terms of, one, is Salesforce even the right product for you? And then if it is, what do you as an organization need in order to be able to use it effectively? So that gets into things like your staffing, your budget, just having a plan. The technology often has capabilities beyond what the organizations can even absorb. So thinking about how do you not only change your technology, how do you change your organization to be able to take better advantage of the tools? So I think, whether organizations work with a consultant like me in that process or go through that work internally, from what I've seen, that tends to lead to better outcomes long-term if organizations have gone through that work of a careful evaluation process. So, I definitely am a big advocate for that. And again, because there are so many options to be considered, and there's often not really great data out there about, objective data about how one tool compares to another, what you can expect long-term if you adopt solution A versus solution B. So that's kind of one of my long-term dreams about technology in the nonprofit sector, is that we would get to the point where we would have better data from which organizations could make these decisions. And I haven't yet figured out sort of a way to do that, but I do think it would require some combination of sort of companies in the space, plus organizations, plus academia, plus foundations, doing some long-term studies around these topics. And there are definitely examples of where that's happening in the space today, but I'd love to see more of that go on.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. The folks over at the Pond are doing some great stuff.
Yeah.
With their whole process for helping organizations find people, and kind of, it's almost like a dating service, right?
Yeah. Trying to level the playing field of helping the right organizations find the right technology vendors. Because I mean, even just I remember walking into the expo hall at an N10 conference a few years ago, and I felt overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
The aisles upon aisles upon aisles of these solutions, some of which I'd heard of, most of which I hadn't. And so where to even begin in figuring out, should I be talking to vendor A or B or C or D, or exactly, all the way through to Z? It's I think it's pretty daunting, and I feel for nonprofits that have to navigate these processes for their organization. It's important, obviously. You can't thrive as a nonprofit in this day and age without good technology and a good technology strategy. But it's challenging to do that well.
Well, and that's also why you and I are here, brother, right? That's why we're here. We provide that consulting, and it doesn't necessarily need to start with, hey, write us a check and we'll give you our advice. We're always happy to chat with folks and start. It's a small network of people. I mean, yourself a great example. People moving all over the industry, right? They've been at one organization, one platform, they move to another, and then they're in a consulting space. So it's a small network of folks. So definitely always take advantage of that. To that end, you put out a great resource in the last few months, right? The Salesforce.org Consulting Partner Landscape Report. Well done. I hear great things about it. Kind of highlights the different partners out there. It's the audience is really more for the Salesforce partner consulting ecosystem. Is that right? Itself versus nonprofits, but I think it's a pretty heavy, useful guide.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So my vision for my business is better buyers, better sellers. So I mentioned at the beginning that I work both with nonprofits as well as businesses that serve the space. So last year, to that end, I put out two resources. The first was a guide for nonprofits to help them through the process of selecting a Salesforce partner for their organization. And then the second was a report specifically for businesses that look to serve the Salesforce nonprofit space. And I did, it's based on 3 years of research that I did on publicly available data on the firms that serve nonprofits with Salesforce consulting. And I mean, I think that, one of my biggest takeaways in doing that work is, we've talked about the number of options that are out there just from a technology perspective for nonprofits. The thing that really jumped out at me in doing this analysis was, it's a similar story on the consulting partner side.
For sure.
In the Salesforce world. I mean, just in the past 2 years, from 2019 to 2021, the number of firms grew by 64% that serve nonprofits. There's over 120 or so of them today. And I mean, Mark, back when you and I were initially doing Salesforce consulting work, you could keep all of the firms that did that work straight in your head, right? You could name them all.
Their annual partner meeting, and we were all in a very small room,
Yeah, you could all sit at one table, right? and I mean, imagine 126 now. So again, just an example of how I think it's fantastic news for nonprofits who need who need these services, and you can't use Salesforce effectively without a good consulting partner to help you. But again, just an example of how the options have multiplied, and that introduces more choice, more complexity for nonprofits, more decisions that have to be made. So yeah, this guide was my attempt, or this report was my attempt to help the firms themselves sort of understand where they sit in that realm. And then, over the course of 2022, we'll be looking to kind of get more of that information out to nonprofits themselves to help them sort of understand just generally who these firms are, what they do, who's who, and kind of how the firms are different from one another. So again, that nonprofits can make the best decision of partners for their needs.
Oh, that's great. Well, this is a topic that we could definitely talk about for a very long time, but we should wrap this up soon. Before we go, any final thoughts, as we kick off 2022 and look towards the future?
We've talked about, some of the things that have gone on with tech companies in the space. And I'm just here to say, like, I'm a cheerleader for all of them. I mean, my perspective is nonprofits exist to make the world a better place. And in order to do that, they need good tools, they need good partners. And so I just want to encourage anybody who's doing this work to keep doing it, to keep pushing, to keep looking for ways to meet unmet needs in the space, if you make tools, to keep making your tools better. If you provide services, keep making your services better, because we all stand to benefit in the end from that happening. And so I love it when I see new companies come into the space, new consulting firms arise. I love the new capabilities that brings, the new energy. And so just want to kind of send out that note of encouragement to everybody who's serving the space to just keep doing what you're doing, and keep moving us all forward.
Well said. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thanks everybody for listening in, and looking forward to the next section. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Nonprofit Voice. You can listen to more episodes of The Nonprofit Voice at nonprofitpro.com/podcast/the-nonprofit-voice. And remember, for your convenience, you can stream any and all episodes of The Nonprofit Voice on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify.